Welcome to Global Truth. This is your host, Dr. Nasir Baig. Michigan. It has always been America's political fault line, a state where union factories, rural farmlands, and burgeoning diverse suburbs collision to decide the fate of presidential terms and congressional control. But in 2026, the battleground has shifted inward to an open Senate seat left by retiring Senator Gary Peters. And right at the center of this storm is a man who doesn't look, sound, or talk like your typical career politician. He is Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, epidemiologist, author, public health champion, and now the progressive standard bearer fighting a high-stake, high-dollar battle for the Democratic nomination against establishment-backed Representative Haley Stevens. To his supporters, he is the clearest, most articulate voice for systematic reform in modern progressive politics. To his critics, he represents an idealistic leftward shift in a state that Donald Trump carried just 2 years back. But whether you track his policy or counter his platform, one thing is completely undeniable. When Abdul El-Sayed speaks, people don't just listen, they analyze. Today, we decode the anatomy of his rise. From the ruins of a bankrupt Detroit health system to the razor-thin margins of the 2026 Senate primary. Who is the doctor trying to prescribe a new medicine to Capitol Hill? To understand his brilliance in communication, you have to look at how he was built. Abdul El-Sayed didn't start his life looking at political data. He started it looking at spreadsheets of human health. Born and raised in Michigan, his academic trajectory reads like an elite playbook, but driven entirely by public service. He graduated from the University of Michigan in 2007, where he didn't just study biology and political science. He was an athlete playing on the university's lacrosse team and delivered the student commencement address. From Ann Arbor, his intellect took him across the Atlantic. He became a Rhodes Scholar, earning a doctorate, DPhil, in public health from the University of Oxford by 2011. He followed that by securing his medical degree from the prestigious Columbia University College of Physicians and Surgeons. By his late 20s, he was a tenure-track professor of epidemiology. He had the cozy, highly compensated life of an elite academic locked down. But then history called. In 2015, the city of Detroit was reeling from a historic municipal bankruptcy. Its public infrastructure was shattered, and its health department had been effectively privatized and gutted. At just 30 years old, Dr. El-Sayed was hired to rebuild the Detroit Health Department from scratch. This is where the theory met the concrete. As health director, he didn't just sit behind a mahogany desk. He systematically targeted lead poisoning in city schools. He stood up to major corporate polluters like Marathon Petroleum to force reductions in emissions that were triggering asthma in inner city children. He looked at public policy through a clinical lens, famously saying, "I didn't set out to be a politician. I trained as a doctor, but saw how broken politics were making people sick." This executive execution in Detroit became the launchpad for his 2018 gubernatorial run, a progressive campaign that fell short in the primary, but solidified him as a foundational architect of Michigan's modern grassroots left. Watch any interview with Dr. El-Sayed, whether he's sparring with corporate anchors or explaining complex health metrics on his podcast, and you immediately notice a structural difference in how he communicates. Most politicians rely on focus-grouped platitudes. They speak in defensive circles. El-Sayed communicates with the diagnostic structural clarity of a physician and a rhetorical grace of an Oxford debater. He takes massive, sprawling economic crises like the skyrocketing cost of prescription drugs or the erosion of real wages and breaks them down into cause and effect models. It is a style defined by absolute intellectual confidence. He doesn't shy away from complex realities, he demystifies them for the average voter. And that clarity feeds directly into his ideological framework. El-Sayed is an unapologetic democratic socialist. His platform for the 2026 Senate race isn't built on incremental tweaks. It's built on structural overhauls. Number 1, Medicare for all. Treating healthcare explicitly as a human right. Removing corporate insurers from the middle of the doctor-patient relation. Number 2, labor empowerment. Backing the PRO Act to eliminate barriers to union organizing. A stance that earned him a monumental endorsement from the United Auto Workers right in the middle of the 2026 primary cycle. And number 3, corporate accountability. Getting corporate PACs and dark money entirely out of the democratic process. This ideology sets up a pristine philosophical contrast in the August 2026 primary. On one side, Representative Haley Stevens represents the pragmatic, centrist, private equity-friendly establishment of the Democratic Party. On the other side, El-Sayed represents a populist, worker-first structural realignment. Now, let's talk strategy, alliance, and the ecosystem of modern progressive victories. A frequent question circulating through national political desks is how much of an impact external progressive heavyweights and regional socialist figures have on a high-stake race in Michigan. Specifically, Dr. El-Sayed. And specifically, does someone like Zohran Mamdani, the highly visible Democratic Socialist Network state assemblyman, play a part in an El-Sayed victory? To answer that, you have to look at how modern progressive insurgencies are organized. While Mamdani operates in the hyper-localized theater of New York politics, and El-Sayed is running a statewide campaign in the industrial Midwest, their political destinies are deeply intertwined through a shared infrastructure. When a progressive candidate like El-Sayed runs against an establishment backed by millions in dark money and corporate PAC spending, they cannot rely on traditional media bias. They rely on a national, decentralized network of small dollar donors, digital organizers, and progressive institutions. Figures like Mamdani, along with national groups like the Democratic Socialists of America, DSA, and progressive media engines, serve as critical national amplifiers. They turn a regional primary in Michigan into a national cause. They mobilize the digital fundraising networks that allow El-Sayed to raise millions from ordinary citizens to counter the massive satellite spending being dumped into Michigan by anti-progressive PACs. While Mamdani isn't knocking doors in Grand Rapids or Flint, the National Democratic Socialist Movement he represents provides the structural blueprint and the grassroots funding bloodstream that makes an El-Sayed victory logistically possible. As the August 2026 primary rapidly approaches, the polls show a neck-and-neck race. The establishment has spent millions trying to frame the doctor as too radical for a swing state. But El-Sayed's campaign continues to surge on the backs of working-class endorsements and grassroots momentum. And if Dr. Abdul El-Sayed wins, it won't just change the representation for Michigan. It will send a shockwave through the entire layout of American governance. It'll prove that a candidate can reject corporate cash, embrace bold structural socialism, and use sheer communicative brilliance to win in the heart of the American Rust Belt. The doctor has made his diagnosis on the American political system. In just a matter of weeks, the voters of Michigan will decide if they want to take the prescription or not. I'm Dr. Nasir Baig, and this is Global Truth. We'll see you on the next breakdown. Take good care of yourself.